Hi, guys. So I just wanted to walk you through the notes on the ethics of free enterprise. Your quiz is due today, so I wanted you to just have a little explanation of some of these things. So we're going back to the days of the Enlightenment, and Adam Smith was one of the Enlightenment philosophers, and he came up with the idea of laissez faire. So you're going back to like ninth grade Enlightenment thinkers and Adam Smith's laissez faire theory of economics. In 1776, he wrote a book that's normally just known as The Wealth of Nations, but the entire title is an inquiry into the nature and causes of the wealth of nations, because he noticed during these absolutism period that there were many nations in Europe that had gotten very wealthy: England, Spain, France, the Netherlands, and then there were other nations, the Germanys, Italy, Belgium, Portugal, uh, that had not seen this Russia that had not seen this prosperity. And so, why was that happening? What were the causes for this? And he said that really it came down to the idea of freedom. Okay, so his three main ideas, besides the idea of laissez faire, which literally means to leave alone, to let alone, no government involvement in the economy, is that you have to have voluntary exchange, which today we call free trade, that there were no import or export tax or quotas to hamper free trade, which we actually have today. So even agreements like NAFTA were just like mercantilism of the 1500s. And the whole idea of mercantilism is that a European nation would take over the lands outside of their own country's borders. They would have colonies, and that the purpose of the colonies was to support the mother country economically. They would send raw goods on the cheap to the mother country. The mother country would manufacture them and sell the finished products back to the colonies for a higher price than they bought the resources. Okay, mercantilism. And so he says, so people today would say that tariffs, quotas, and trade agreements all stop this voluntary exchange. That if you want to become prosperous, you have to be able to trade as you see fit with no restrictions. So he was also the idea of this idea of free enterprise, right? Today we say that free enterprise, free markets, and capitalism are all the same thing. But free enterprise really means just the ability to conduct business without any restrictions. Okay, so it is not being the same. Being pro free enterprise is not being the same as pro business, because he believed that businesses will try to benefit themselves at the expense of free enterprise, that businesses will try to pass laws that protect their individual businesses against other businesses. That's why we have here the idea of the antitrust legislation, that you cannot have a company that becomes a monopoly of the market. Okay, that would hamper free enterprise and prevent other businesses from growing. Okay, so in general, he really wants minimal government involvement. He said there's only four reasons for the government or four roles for the government to fulfill in any society, and that's to provide national defense, right? So an army, navy, as well as a police force, right, to protect the nation and people so they can conduct business, to provide a court system to enforce contracts, right? That means business contracts and laws, so that people don't cheat each other or steal from each other. To provide a road system, which also includes bridges and canals and ports and things like that. But basically, a means of transporting goods so that business can flow. And then to provide education, that an educated population will be a prosperous population. Five features today of free enterprise, what's considered free enterprise, is that you have private property, that there is choice, voluntary exchange, that means that people engage in business of their own free will, they're not forced into anything, that there is competition, that goes along with the idea of choice, that there can be many people providing similar services, and that competition will actually improve the goods and services that each business is trying to provide in order to get more of the market share, and that there are economic incentives. That basically is a fancy way of saying profit. That you engage in free enterprise because you're going to get something out of it, usually, which means profit, money. So, what are ethics? Well, just the word ethics is a branch of philosophy dealing with values relating to human contact, and it's basically the idea of what people believe is right and wrong. Now, some people say that that changes over time, and it really doesn't. Ethics says that there is an absolute uh, ideas of right and wrong. For example, nobody would ever say that murder is right. Some people say it might be justified in certain cases, but we all have the idea that it is wrong, that stealing is wrong, that you may justify it in certain cases, but that it is wrong. And that things like honesty are always going to be right. People may not like to hear the truth, but it is always right to tell the truth. Okay, so basically, it's a system of morals and principles. Okay, so then people will argue that free enterprise is the most ethical form of economics. Why? Because it says in free enterprise you have the right to choose your occupation, right? You can choose to have a job, whatever job it is that you want, or you can choose to not work as well. That's another choice. That the production of goods and services is for the majority and the minority. That adds to choice. That not everybody can afford a Lamborghini, but it's out there for those who want it. That not everybody needs hearing aids, but they are there for people who do need it. But everybody needs, food, and so that there is all types of food production there. Today, we would say that everybody needs toilet paper, and so it is produced for the majority as well as the minority. Okay, free enterprise rewards or punishes producers on how well they respond to the public, the type, the quality, and the price of the things that they produce. Okay, so that if people like your products and your services, you're going to do well because people will patronize your business and you will make money. If you are not good at those things, then you are in quotes being punished because people will not patronize your business and you will go out of business. Okay, you won't have customers, and that free enterprise requires a need for many freedoms, right? Free to work where you want or not to work, free to start a business or fail at it, that there's no guarantee. So these ideas lately of government bailouts of corporations, that would actually be against the idea of free enterprise, that there is the right to private property, that people should be able to own their own things, that no one can take away from them without compensation. Um, and that there is free and voluntary exchange of goods, that you can buy and sell your property, and that there is also freedom to fail, that you will not be guaranteed always to be successful. And that there is risk involved, and if you don't want to take the risk on your own for an entire business, then you work for someone else and they will take the risk. What's the government role in free enterprise? So, according to free enterprise economists, there is also a limited role of the government, that the government should be the enforcer of contracts, that there should be a court system, just like Adam Smith said, that the government should provide public goods that are paid for by taxes, things like national defense, the roads, the bridges, the dams, the railways, harbors, airports, elementary and secondary education to teach civics. That means the laws of the land and produce responsible citizens. And that there should be a circular flow to the economy, that three parts of the economy work together. And so here is the picture of that, right? The major parts of the economy are the idea of government, individual people, and businesses, and that these work together to produce things that everybody needs, the product markets, and the resources, so that there is resources that come from these things that come from these three groups to make the things, and that these three groups work together to produce the things that are needed by each one. All right, so households and businesses pay taxes to the government. The government then makes payments, right, to purchase resources, and payments to the products that they need in order to be sustained, um, and that they provide goods and services back to the firms and the households, usually in the forms of education, transportation, and protection. Okay, and that as a result, right. Households provide land, labor, and capital into the resource market. In exchange, they get paid for that. They get income for those things. Resources provide the things that businesses need, and then businesses uh, um, feedback into those resources, that the product markets give money to the businesses that are producing the goods and services, that the households buy the goods and services, and they give money back into the product markets. Okay, so it all kind of fits together. All right, we're almost at the end here. How does the U.S. government incorporate the ideas of free enterprise into our founding documents? So we have always been about free enterprise from the very beginning, from our Declaration of Independence, right? John Locke said that people had the right to property, and in our Declaration of Independence, we say that everybody is guaranteed these natural rights of life, liberty. We say the pursuit of happiness, but like I said, John Locke, the British writer that Thomas Jefferson quoted from or took from in writing the Declaration, he had said property. And so there's choice and multiple freedoms. Also in our Declaration of Independence, one of the things we wrote, that Britain had prevented the colonies from trading with all parts of the world. So that's the idea of voluntary exchange, and that Britain was taxing without representation, and that was also going down on our choice and freedoms. So right from the very beginning, when we broke away from England, we already were using these ideas of free enterprise as part of our reasons for rebelling against colonial control of the colonies. Then in our founding documents, the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, it says no tax or duty shall be laid on articles exported from any state, right? So that allows for competition. States can't prevent competition from businesses and things being produced in different states. Constitution also grants federal government limited powers to assure that the ground rules are fair, right? That we have in our Constitution provisions for a fixed standard of weights and measurements that everybody will use, that it encourages initiative and inventiveness. We have things like copyright and patent protection laws, provide a system of sound currency with an established value. In the Constitution, we originally had a currency based on gold and silver. Over our 250 plus years of being a nation, we've gotten away from that. We now have a fiat currency, but that's a lesson for another day. To enforce free trade, that they're free, that trade should be free from interfering special interests. Again, that has kind of changed over the decades that we've been a nation, but we still have this as a principle. And to protect individuals from the harmful acts of others. That's what our laws are for and our court systems. And then in the Bill of Rights, we have the idea of private property will not be taken for public use without just without just compensation. And so that's the idea of the right to private property. Okay, so in an ethical system, though, even though we have all of these rights, there are also responsibilities. So although we have the right to voluntary exchange, that people should engage in free trade with each other, then you also have the responsibility to have accurate information about the goods and services that are being exchanged. You can't false advertise things to people. You have to be honest with them about it. Another right to private property, but you have to use that property for legal purposes and then not infringe on the rights of others as you're doing so. And the right to competition, that we should have competition in order to encourage free enterprise, but kind of like the idea with voluntary exchange up here, the responsibility is that there should be truth in advertising. And if there is not, then we have our court systems in order to right the wrongs. Okay, so I hope that gives you a little bit more explanation of going through this instead of just reading it for yourself. And it will help you out with the quiz that we have to fill out.